Hey there. You made it. You made it. I guess curiosity got the best of you, and you want to see what this thing's all about. So welcome. My name's Travis Shallotte, and this is a Live on Tape podcast. As a full disclaimer right off the bat, this is not what I do for my day job. I am a songwriter by trade, and never thought that I would be hosting a podcast. But you know, one thing I've learned is right when you think that life can't get any more weird, it definitely can. And the other thing that I abide by is that I'll try anything 3 times. And as you can imagine, that's got me in a lot of trouble in the past. But now you're in it with me, and let's see how this thing plays out. So instead of a long extended intro, let's get right to it. My first guest, Mr. Tripp Murphy. Love it.
I went straight for the darkest, I went into the Congo. That was the Heart of Darkness blend. That was the James Conrad blend. James Conroy, my fault. Conrad?
Is it me or did the hiss go away? Am I just, is that just the crickets?
I think you're hearing cicadas. They constantly do that.
Yeah.
They'll get louder too.
All right, well, fuck it. Let's.
Well, first I'm going to take a picture of you with your headphones on, with your setup, with your Swisher Sweet hanging out of your mouth. That's great. Oh, that's so good. Get the console in there.
All right. It's fucking official. All right. I even brought notes. You know how much I care about this?
I was wondering. I I almost made notes. That's how much I cared about it. But I didn't, so maybe I don't care about it. I made many mental notes.
Dude, me too.
I took the...
And dude, this is the thing. When I started making mental notes about it, I'm kind of like, I want this to be free form. All right, fuck it. Let's start it. All right. Very first episode of a Live on Tape.
Yeah, buddy.
Episode 1. And I could think of nobody better for my first guest.
Episode 1.6587.
That's it, dude. All right. You know what? I even wrote a little thing for it. First guest. Wilmington legend. Man of many layers. Fur coat in the summer wearing. Songwriter, poet, man of leisure and mystery. Father, builder, light bulb eating visionary and stargazer. Bass playing, guitar strumming, storyteller, knife toting, and I'm pretty sure record holder for wearing the longest scarf ever worn on a summer's day. Mr. Tripp Murphy in the flesh.
Oh,
dude, you know what's funny about that? That took me 10 seconds to write, and that could have been 2 pages worth.
You know me.
I know you.
You know me. And it was splendidly written as well.
Look at that lighter.
That was... Do I have it? Did I Bobby Rebel you? There it is. There it is. Well, man, thank you.
Dude, one good thing about this, I wanted you to be the first guest for a lot of reasons. One, the outline of this podcast is just an hour-long conversation, or just a conversation in general. Length, be damned. And where we just literally talk about whatever we want. I've got some questions. I did a little, I didn't have to do background research on you because hanging out with you for the last 10 years has been an extensive research. And
you're an expert.
I'm an expert of all things Tripp Murphy. When I'm pulling up to your house, I would just like have this epiphany, like there are so many more layers to you and how we've gotten to be on the second story outdoor porch of this beautiful compound you got out here.
Ogres are like onions. Yeah. Well, it was, let me start by saying it was such a pleasure to see you pull up after all these years. And no amount of words could, from me to you, of course, describe our friendship. And I am sincerely, both flattered and subtly intrigued why you would choose me. I think part of what we all are is inside we're just ourselves, and we can't even figure our own thing out. So you always wonder if, whether it's friendship or love, what makes another person, what makes us click or vibe or what have you. So to see you pull up and know we were going to do this was a sheer joy, and I hope to help you unfold those many layers. Peel the onion back.
Man, it's funny. When originally thinking about this concept, it's like I got into Mark Maron's WTF podcast like a couple years ago when I quit boozing. And like having those 1 hour listen sessions on the way when I was driving to my own shit in Chapel Hill, I would put on in-ears and listen to those podcasts. And every time I got done listening to his 1 hour-ish conversations with creative people, it just made me feel better, man. Like, and then every time I've had conversations with people that I respect, creatives of all kind, at the end of the conversation, I just felt better about the world. The way I looked at it, I got more perspective into that person's life. And so this podcast is very selfish in its innate sense. It's like, I know when I don't do things like this and engage with people on not like, hey, what's up, man? Oh, you're doing that too? Cool. It's like, hey, man, like, let's really have a conversation. When I don't do that with people, I start to just kind of float off, man. It gets into this dangerous headspace for me. And so it's like,
I've felt that from you many times, and was always enjoyed being, hopefully being that mental jouster with you. And oddly enough, I'm quite the opposite. I kind of lose my focus when I am overly inundated with I guess the introvert's extrovert. I kind of build a wall of a very obsequious presence out front just to kind of cover up what's really inside, which is a shy, redheaded kid that, got made fun of a lot with a lisp and a stutter and a lot of different funny accents from the northeastern corridor and the Midwest.
dude,
So I buried myself in introspective thought, and I really enjoy and embrace opportunities to deal firmly and fairly equitably on that level with friends one-on-one. But going away from that, I recognize in myself I kind of dissolve into this quasar of tirade. I'm just throwing as much shit out as I can. I'm like an ACAC. I'm like
to keep them at bay.
Anti-aircraft gun. The bombers are coming in, and I'm just throwing up flag.
It's funny.
Stay out of my airspace.
You know, one thing I've really noticed from like creative friends, especially like frontmen in general, how introverted they are at the root of it.
I have noticed the same.
I am a deep introvert that
You
takes a lot of energy to front a band. Some people just have it, that the ego thing's built into them, and they're like, I got shit to say. I want as many people to hear what I have to say. I need a crowded room. If it's not packed, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
Like, it takes a lot of energy for me.
It does.
To force myself from not closing the blinds, locking the doors, and just being alone with my thoughts, which is where like that familiar, dangerous feeling is for me.
What's so admirable about your pursuit on that exact topic is that I watch you from a distance. I almost have retreated from that battle after 25 or 30 years, however many, I don't really count, but you get tired and you almost say, and I've always been a little bit about this music is for me, and I don't think money should have anything to do with it. And if I'm pleased with where the songwriting is going, but you being careful of the trap that you become someone who's just telling themselves lies, you have to have some appeal, not mass appeal, but you have to have trusted colleagues and friends that you admire their work, tell you that you're on the right path. And so when I watch you go out there and continue to press through what is so difficult, the energy it requires to try to And here we cross that river Styx of what about music makes you satisfied internally for yourself, and at which point does it become about pleasing others, and why we have ingrained in all of us this tremendous desire to show what we've created to others.
And for them to not, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but not only that, but for them, the need for their acceptance of it, and fighting the feeling of needing that acceptance. It's this dual-edged sword of like, why do I feel like I need the praise from these people?
Sure, and you don't.
You don't. You absolutely don't.
And when you it is, it seems like a very cathartic Zen-like moment when you can cross that plane. Whether it's and it's very similar to the patience it requires to let a song take its own shape in your mind without pushing it or rushing it. You get to this place where it is only for you, and art is so personal, surrounded by an abyss, an entire cosmos of the entertainment industry, which does it a different way from how the artist conceives of it, I think, at first, and certainly more and more differently as we go along, but not wrong, just different. And personally, for myself, reaching a place where I just surrendered to every aspect of it. I don't want to say that I don't care, because I care deeply about many things. I'm probably closer to an empath than I'd like to be. I certainly care more about people individually, friends, family. And when the world moves, when it spins very quickly, music, my first passion, aside from my family, of course, spins out the first. It flies out centrifugally faster than anything else. So I think cultivating the ability to treat it like a chess hobby, which, as you know, as I'm saying that to you, that seems almost absurd for people like us who embrace it, cultivate it, live it, eat it, breathe it. It's all we do. You never stop thinking about.
You almost welcome the torture of it. It's very strange because the whole thing is such a mystery.
It is, and I think when you embrace, I would liken it to, you always hear that Da Vinci saw the sculpture inside the block of marble, and I try to approach songcraft like that. And Paul McCartney said there's a reservoir of brilliance that you tap into, and you're lucky if you can and hit it. And there's so many theories about whether it's synesthesia, or if the colors appear to you in certain keys, or if the song feels like a bass, or a song that should be written on bass or on piano or guitar. All those things are just little tributaries. The source of the river is this cataclysmic turmoil inside the artists. And I don't even like calling myself an artist, so I hope that doesn't come off as pretentious. But
man, I battle with that. I've come to accept that it's what I do. It's if you make art, and you're a creative person, I for years got hung up on that word. Yeah. Now I got more things to worry about.
That's exactly right, and I think that kind of brings it right down to my point, is you let all the minutia go, and you just do what you know how to do the best you can, and you hope that every once in a while you can turn out a good song. And I've gotten to the place where I don't even really feel that anyone else needs to hear them. Does that create issues of its own? Of course it does. They say true art is never finished, it's just turned in.
Exactly. We've had a lot of conversation about this over the years.
This is something you've been more helpful to me than anyone, just saying you've got so much music, you got to get it out there.
Well, this is the other thing, the fact that you're sitting on this repertoire.
Kind of running the other way now.
Running the other way. I remember the first time you told me, you were like, I'm thinking about just not really pursuing this back or releasing this back catalog, and kind of want to have the kind of music that people discover when I'm gone. It's almost like this. What do they call it when you bury that thing? You put all this stuff in a time capsule.
Time capsule.
It'll be like a Tripp Murphy time capsule.
I have thought about that, endlessly, and I'm actually more in favor of, I like making progress. I don't like not finishing projects. They're at many different stages, but I do think that when they're all finished, I will just tuck them away into a little, wrap them up in a ribbon and a stack of like 15 albums and just leave them.
And that's where I was fighting you. Like a year ago, I'm like, look, man, your shit is amazing.
But how much fun? What about
people need to hear this.
What about a treasure hunt? What about like posthumously?
What about both?
What about a treasure hunt?
What about both? What about you release stuff, this teaser stuff? I mean,
hide them in the trunks of trees and in the bottom
that's
of the rivers.
Two roads. Do you the discipline all right, this is it. The discipline / my approach to it, the disservice of having people not hear your stuff while you're here, so for you to feel the impact of your music on people while you're here. The discipline to keep that at bay.
I don't care. Yeah.
I love it.
I don't care. And I
wish I had more of that.
I think I used to. And I have to be honest with myself and others. I think, of course, age changes you. I never cared enough because it was always pretty avant-garde, or I would have been, I know how to write a pop structure. I certainly know how to make something sound, I love hooks, don't get me wrong. There was a while when I thought you should write a hook on the verse, a hook on the bridge, and I focus on that.
Tag that chorus as many times as you can.
Tag it, and sometimes you can tag it too much. But I also really enjoy writing a song that doesn't even have a discernible chorus, and they tell
or rhyme at all.
They tell me I've gotten to the place where I'm not in charge or in control at any point in what's coming out of my fingers, my mouth, or my mind. The words are gifts. The melodies are gifts. I don't know where they come from. I would love to, I conceive of successful shows in my mind. I conceive of successful band formats. It's a wonderful experience, as you know, to have a tight band that believes in the project entirely. I really enjoy the process of having strong players that contribute and write. A drummer that has integral drum melody parts and every instrument that make the song better is friendship. Really, for me, playing music with others has always been about friendship. I can't imagine not doing it with friends. I had very, very rarely with like a session player or something on a project that I didn't know. And if that was the case, for instance, the Mumbles from New Orleans, when they did some stuff at Sound of Music in Richmond, when we were at David Lowery's place and I was working with Alan Weatherhead, and I was just trying to squeeze in some rough reference tracks on some new stuff for Loyalty is a Fierce Companion, having just remixed, bounced to 2-inch tape, The Devil's Dove, sides 1 and 2, for Calling All Moonlight Thieves and Lovers. And these guys were playing down the street. I had a couple bourbon drinks, went and saw them. They were doing Beastie Boys covers like a jazz trio, and the lead guy was a baritone sax player. Piano guy was like 90-degree Nord, and
you just lit up. You're like...
They killed it. I couldn't help but walk up to them and buy a couple T-shirts and say, hey, what are you guys doing tomorrow?
Yeah.
Got an open day at a great 2-inch tape studio. They came by, we rehearsed for like 2 hours, and we got 3 really great songs out of it. That being said, I would prefer to work with people I love as friends, and if I don't know them in the beginning, I'm tremendously hopeful that our friendship becomes more important than the music or the song that we made. And it usually does, I would say most times. You fall out of touch with people when
it's tricky.
It is tricky.
It's tricky. I got a question.
Yeah.
That brings up so much. All right. It's almost kind of going back to the beginning a little bit. I know for me, the idea of a band was so intriguing. Like, just from such a young age, I don't know if I always had friends when I was younger, but I was always felt like I was like right on the outside of actually being part of any one group.
Yeah.
I would hang out with these guys over here, and I would hang out with these guys in the neighborhood, and which was cool because I found common ground kind of with everybody.
Yeah.
But I never really felt like I was like part of like a tight knit. Like when I see like people our age now that are still friends from like their childhood friend and like tight as hell, like in each other's weddings, that's so like kind of foreign to me. Like I've gone through these different groups, like I keep in touch with people, but when I was younger, when I would see a band play on stage, I was like, that's what I want.
Sure.
Like almost like biker gang mentality. Like these four guys
Yeah.
are a fucking unit. And like you don't fuck with any of them.
Yeah, you wanted your troop or your tribe.
That's it.
And music can be that.
That's it. And I've learned along the way that does exist.
Yeah.
But it also doesn't exist.
As difficult as any marriage, times 4 or 5, you know, you've got to have that relationship.
But see, I like the idea of, all right, we can fight within the band, but nobody, if anybody fucks with anybody in the band, it switches.
Sure.
You know, that might come off as like a violent reference, but you know what I mean. It's like just that tight knit, like, and it also seemed like bands just had answers to things that I didn't know and was curious about. When you look at it from afar, it's like they know stuff that I want to know about. You know what I mean? Like you see them on stage, and this no verbal communication, and there's this non-verbal stuff, and
it's a Lost Boys phenomenon.
Man.
There's a power behind a group of people that dress similarly,
I know,
that are bringing you a sound that you like. So there's your synapses are firing on many levels. You're hearing something. You went to see the show or bought the album because you loved the way it sounded, and then if you could throw a look on top of it, and you dug that, all of a sudden you wanted to have that pack yourself. Like you said,
I still do.
Yeah,
that feeling has like just been amplified over the years.
Yeah,
I'm still on the hunt for it. You know, I feel it. I feel it at times.
It never goes away.
Yeah,
and I've been in some really tight. You know, played with some of the same people for, you know, going on 2 decades now. And you do get a brother. You develop a brotherhood.
Dude, let's go back to that. Because I've got some notes here. One of them is, what was the first band? Let's go back to Baby Tripp Murphy.
Oh boy!
I was going to ask you about what was the Murphy childhood home like with the brother and the whole. But we might touch on that later. I'm more interested right now in what was the first band. And let's give listeners like a timeline of all the bands. I mean, I've got the Black Sox, Sweaty Already, Yesterday's Love Song, Billy Joe Murphy. Let's.
There were so many.
Give them the highlights.
Well, the first band, you know, and this is always, I think, the first band always comes with that wonderful spirit of lunacy, and you know, you're 15 or 16 or 17, and you just kind of fall in with some guys in high school or something, and that's what happens. If you're lucky. And sometimes they last for one talent show. In my case, that's really what it was.
You actually did a talent show with a band?
Did a talent show at my high school. Owen J. Roberts, who was
get topped off on that French press?
Supreme Court Justice. Yes, of course.
I'll come to you.
Can you reach me? There we go. A little more.
Go juice.
A little more go juice.
My caffeine intake these days is getting a little.
Got to be careful with it. It's a drug. That's why I referenced Seinfeld earlier.
I want a new drug.
Wonder won't make me sweat. Yeah, I'm sweating now, so I didn't find a new one.
Dude, it's actually all right. Let me pitch this setting here too.
Mr. Buttons is the answer. Mr. Buttons was the name of the band.
I love it.
Some really talented, like chorus. I was a jock in high school, but also had long hair and played the guitar. So I hung out with. I was not in any cliques. I liked everybody. I think my senior superlative in the yearbook was best personality. I just liked people, and I worked on cars with the Motorheads.
I love that.
And
mine was most likely to be arrested. That's true.
I fulfilled yours. Mr. Buttons, and it was just 3 or 4 guys. Joe Spears, Bill Ferrari, great last name.
Fucking phenomenal name.
And
Dick Ferrari.
Bill Ferrari, Dick Ferrari, Joe Spears, basically a trio. I played guitar, and we had a female vocalist. Long story short, which is nearly impossible for me, as you know, but this is a good story. We go to the Pocono Mountains in northern Pennsylvania for a weekend, and the idea was to just play music and try to work on an album. We were 17 years old. This is 1989. And one of the guys, I forget who, breaks out a Ouija board. Ouija.
You feel that, folks? This is gonna be good.
It's gonna be good.
This is just good. This was worth the price of admission.
You have no idea.
Which is free.
And so this is one of countless true rock and roll stories that have transpired in my life, and a lot of them to do with the paranormal and supernatural hauntings, and we'll have to do the Bearsville stories in another episode, I guess. But so a Ouija board comes out. I'm a born and raised Roman Catholic, but bordering on atheism at this point, just because there was so much man-made dogma going on in that. And I was only a few years away from actually being excommunicated when they asked me to convert my newly married wife, or soon-to-be married girlfriend, and will be my wife, pregnant with my soon-to-be born son, and they asked me to convert them to Catholicism, and I said no. And based on that, and some
just as a gut instinct, no, or
some newspaper, I just wasn't into telling anybody what they should be. I was not my wife or son.
Yeah, fuck.
And
that.
So when a bishop who's meeting me, which is what the Catholic Church does, they meet with people before they marry, and they want to talk to them about their. And I said, and nothing against the Roman Catholic Church, they do a lot of good.
Sure.
I certainly got a great education in the first 8 years, and experienced some really wild, quote unquote Roman Catholic guilt that you experience.
You're a Catholic in remission.
In remission, yeah. And I'd written some, at this point I'm in college, fast forward a little bit, I'd written some papers about, like pre-Da Vinci Code stuff, just about how the Council of Nicaea and all the man-made dogma in 300 AD, selecting gospels and all that stuff. I just thought that was a big load of rubbish, and that they really kind of skipped all the Gnostic and Essene and pseudepigrapha and apocryphal texts, which were probably closer to the truth about Jesus' life. So this bishop listens to me tell him, no, I will not convert my wife and son. And then he pulls out my papers, which is so Gestapo-like, where this guy found...
So he was sitting on those.
Sitting on college newspaper op-eds that I wrote for the Kutztown University Gazette. And he was like, based on the fact that you won't do this and your opinions about the hierarchical, misgivings of the Roman Catholic Church, you're hereby excommunicated. So let's rewind 3 years before that.
That's a bangerang.
This is when I'm 20. 3 years prior, I'm still struggling with where I am with my faith and all sorts of other things, which I have great spiritual faith.
Sure.
In many things. So the Ouija board was something that was taught to us in Catholic school. It was just, you didn't get in the same room with one. This was a portal to hell and everything evil. So it was a big step for me to sit down at that table and put my hands on this Ouija board and light a candle, turn all the lights out.
By yourself?
With the three other bandmates.
Oh, gotcha.
And then the questions started coming out. And apparently in Ouija, someone who knows what they're doing kind of follows the guidelines. Is there a spirit in the room? Are you a male or female? So the questions start coming out. And I'm very open-minded. I want to see if this thing works. And it's a plastic piece with a little viewer. And it was
a few sessions.
Made by Parker Brothers. I thought this thing was such a load of garbage. Such a load of bunkum. Man, and as sure as I'm sitting here today, that thing started flying across the board. And I spent the first 30 minutes just accusing everybody else of pushing it. But then they spent the next 30 minutes accusing everyone else. So everybody was completely overwhelmed by what was happening. The questions start rolling out. Are you a man or a woman? The thing flies to male. What year were you born? 1943. Spells it out letter by letter. And it's moving faster and faster. And at this point, my fingers are barely touching the thing. No one else's are either. Our eyes are closed, but you can't help but peek and be like, who's pushing this thing? And when you look across and see a bunch of fingers half an inch above a board or a mechanism, and it's just zipping across a board, we go through 20 questions. Same guy was asking him, I think it was Bill. And one of his questions was, how did you die? Or are you a benevolent spirit? The answer was yes, and that certainly relieved everyone in the room. How did you die? It spelled gunshot. Well, we're in high school. Of course, questions like, what was your favorite beer? Smithwick. Bass. No, I'm sorry, the answer was Bass Ale. Did you smoke cigarettes? Yes. What was your favorite cigarette? Chesterfield. Every letter spelled perfectly. The thing's flying across the board. I'm completely out of control and I'm sweating profusely, freaking out. There's definitely a spirit telling us about his life in the room. What did you do for a living? Musician. Spells it out. What was your favorite instrument? R-I-C-K-E-N-B-A-C-H-E-R. Rickenbacker. Completely, I have no idea. I'm just following this thing. Who is your favorite artist today? I'm telling you, it gives me chills just thinking about it. T-O-M-P-E-T-T-Y. Tom Petty. You were killed by a gunshot. Who killed you? 3 names, takes 2 minutes for it to spell across the board. Mark David Chapman. And the other guys fly out of their chairs. I don't know anything still. I don't know what's going on. I have no facts. I'm just listening to these answers. And they're all jumping up and down because apparently that's who shot John Lennon in 1980. Oh, and the spirit of John Lennon also spelled out 1980. 20 questions into it, I realized that we might have been visited by John Lennon in the Poconos. The next thing we did was put on Tom Petty, Full Moon Fever, which had just come out that summer in 1989, that spring. And sure enough, it hit me like a ton of bricks that it was the most Beatles-sounding thing I'd heard in 20 years. And then, of course, as we know now, the Traveling Wilburys, Tom Petty was asked to play with those, George Harrison and Roy Orbison and ELO's frontman, what was
Jeff Lynne.
Jeff Lynne. They asked Tom Petty, 20 years younger than them, because he had that thing. But that, to me, was the most quintessential proof of what just happened, because needless to say, I was stunned and was, of course, very doubtful that I'm still convinced that someone else was pushing it around. It didn't seem like it, but I went away from that thinking, there's so much more out here. There's so much more in this second, third, fourth, fifth, through 10th layers of the ether. And there's great historical and universal characters, ascended masters, not just John Lennon, if he is one, but, through Buddhism and Hinduism and certainly Christianity, but all mythologies. There are some powerful presences that are kind of pulling the strings, and it was at that moment that I realized you should start paying attention to what's around you, because it's obviously more than this beer in your hand, these girls in front of you, this hot rod car, this guitar strung way down low, and there's something guiding this. And if I have a hard time today saying that the ghost or the spirit of John Lennon came to visit 4 teenage kids in the Poconos to just tell him he was there and what album he liked. But he did. I'm convinced that he did.
What an amazing story.
And
I'm sitting here just like, man.
And that happened. And I have, I'm very, very glad to know there were 3 other guys that about 20 years later, we got back in touch through Facebook, of course. And every one of them and myself brought it up instantly. It was the first thing we brought up. No one said, how are you? How many kids do you have? What do you do for a living? How's your life? Everyone said, do you remember John Lennon visiting us on the Ouija board in Poconos? And
Dude, what a profound thing right after the Catholic Church thing of like them trying to keep you from that. The first time you dip your pen in that other world, boom, there's this whole other thing that's out there.
Oh yeah, and if anything, yeah, it not only caused me to search much more deeply into everything,
Question everything.
whether it was Manly P. Hall and what at the time in the 80s was considered kind of dangerous New Ageism and cultism. Of course, occult just meaning mysterious or hidden. The Roman Catholic Church pursued occult as everything. They were burning people for in the 1500s, and even in the 1980s and 90s, it was still, you don't touch that stuff. And of course, ever since I've tried to read and get my hands on as much of it as I can. On the white side, I try to stay away from, I definitely don't make a practice of reading the De Arbitel, De Magica, stuff. I'm trying not to open up any more
dabble in the
channels.
voodoo too much.
Yeah, but
to recognize that it's there, though, it's just part of being a curious person.
It enhanced my true faith in a divine creator as well, and that if you're a faithful person of Christian descent that also is very open-minded about all world religions, understanding that they're just cultural disseminations of the same thing. The myths line up. Everyone has a similar Kronos superlative Titan father figure that spawned a demiurge or demigod type. And ours is God the Father, God the Son, and the Trinity was convenient to the Roman Catholic Church to cater to a multi-million person populace across the Roman Empire who had spent the previous 1,000 years in a polytheistic society. So the Roman Catholic Church gave them the Trinity, and through the years I've studied how many common denominators they all have. But at the heart of it, I did find with all that there was a deep-rooted manifest presence, much bigger than ourselves, responsible for benevolence and evil, and that balance was what the ancient Egyptians talked about constantly, and it framed a lifelong project after 10 or 15 albums. That's what really made me dig into the Devil's Dove, and that the irony of that name, and that the whole album was going to be about exploring through love, drug addiction, alcohol, by putting all the things that we think of as good in the world and all the things we think of as bad in the world and smash them together into a chemical experiment. We simply have to operate in a world of opposites. You can't have black without white. You can't have thin without fat. You can't have tall without short. You can't have good without evil. And if you embrace both of them and touch on them constantly, and politics right now, I mean, look how divisive and polar it is. I take great pride in trying to walk down the middle and look at what makes sense from both sides. And
to add on that,
it can be done. It can be done.
To add on to that, it's like,
where are the moderates anymore? You know?
And to recognize that good and evil is in
everything,
all of us.
Everything.
We all have both sides in us too.
It's in your cereal bowl. Some people don't like marshmallows in their. You're like,
I'm with you, man. That reminds me of this old like Native American quote where it's like, there's two wolves inside of you, a good one and an evil one.
Sure.
And whichever one you feed.
Keoki Koatsu.
Yeah, it's like whatever one you feed. That makes so much sense to me. It's like,
and it's good to let the ravenous evil one out now and again.
It's necessary.
I think you gotta.
Maybe that's what necessary evil means.
I think you just defined it perfectly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like that's
a necessary evil.
But then to be like self-aware enough to when that starts to creep up,
bring back the necessary good.
That's it, man.
And I have.
So you can't have the dark without the light. You don't know what the dark is without the light.
You can't. And that's adversity. Strength is bred through adversity. the concept of juxtaposition of evil and good, or black and white, or just polar opposites. It is in yin yang. It is in male female. It's the entire cosmos is constructed of a magic ratio, a divine ratio, the Fibonacci sequence: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 24, 55. You know, if you add one to itself, it has and if you divide them back, it equals a ratio. And everything in architecture, spiral galaxies, the shape of a pine cone, the shape of a nautilus shell, they're all following some magic math, which is where music comes in for us. I believe the divine ratio imbues itself in music, and I think the most beautiful music probably follows some of those same structures, and I've explored that. Without doing that, you're missing out on some really important principles of life, I think, and you know, great thinkers and great writers have beautiful ways of expressing these balances. You know, Tolkien, and I love Tolkien, and I love any Oxford-trained linguist or writer, C.S. Lewis as well, but then many more that follow in those footsteps. I would ascribe George R.R. Martin's success with Game of Thrones because he picked up right where Tolkien and Lewis kind of left off in many styles. But one of the things Tolkien said was about death, and that we struggle with death so much in the West. In the East, death is a cycle. They have a long count calendar, of course, in South America. In the East, it's just rebirth, and you're constantly bettering yourself. You have two halves. There's a soul, and then there's the physical form, this corporeal husk that we wear. We shed it like a chrysalis, and we grow. And you're trying to do the best you can, or you're trying to, I believe, from, you know, this isn't me, this is what they're saying. You know, if you improve the situation for yourself and others around you, you might climb a rung.
Yeah, what you come back as is slightly elevated than the last.
Yeah, and I think karma, samsara, and all those things are very real. And Christianity says, you know, live by the sword, die by the sword. You reap what you sow. The golden rule, treat others. That's been in every ancient mythology throughout. They're all the same. And it's just treat others well. And sometimes the bad guys who abuse power get a lift up occasionally, but at the end, they lose. And sometimes those that do great good are mocked and flogged, and, you know, the prophet is revered in every land but his own, right? So oftentimes the person that has a lot of good to offer will not be understood or respected at first. But
and
it all
throughout
comes
history, killed.
And killed. Which is the ultimate martyrdom of their thought. If you're murdered for your thought principles, those are going to espouse further and probably be more revered than the banal, adroit fools who murdered you for those thoughts. They're not going to be remembered for their acts, but the person who died for their principles or their beliefs will be. That's kind of the nature of the world. And Tolkien said, death is the path we all must take. When the great gray veil lifts and beyond and I'm paraphrasing, but beyond are the white shores. And I believe that firmly, that when you get to the end, it is the beginning. And that goes right back to the concept of the devil's dove, which is, of course, just one project that I've worked on, but it did subsume a good 10 to 15, 20 years of my life. And
I remember when you were doing remixes of it, and I even sang. Didn't I sing on?
Yeah,
Isn't
of
that
course
the record I sang on?
You did, yeah, and so many other. You did. You sang on
horses. God, what's the name of it?
I can't even remember.
Events Are Like Horses.
Events Are Like Horses, and that's a small snippet of the kind of poetry I think you'll find on that double album project, which is every song title and, you know, the theme of the album, going through the seasons and going through using decks of cards, which was the ancient tarot system to indicate
The Four Seasons.
a season for the song, a season for the story, and wrapped in the framework of a very simplistic, dualistic love story, how to approach life's issues from all angles, in a kind of a West Side Story manner, in a folk rock opera sort of thing. I always loved Roger Waters. I loved Pink Floyd, but Roger Waters left Pink Floyd and started doing rock operas like Radio Chaos and Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking, and they were brilliant to me. He was really digging into something that no one had really done before, which was he was using sampled radio clips from the 40s and 50s. You know, he lost his father in World War II, and I'm sure that stuck with him. But by the late 80s, you know, new wave and electronica and, you know, music was changing, I'm sure. I always think about those artists, any artist that comes through their form and becomes the best at their time's form. And then all of a sudden it's outdated. You know, one day you're the best mid-70s classic rock band, and then disco makes you irrelevant. And then you're the best disco band in 1978.
For the time being.
For the time being.
It makes you
and in 1980,
temporarily, and then, you know,
the best,
if it's solid, it always circles back around.
Yeah, which brings me certainly to the point that I set out with you know, my pipe dream of a legacy company that was based on the three principles.
Yeah, let's hit on that.
Just legacy for the song.
Atticus Records,
Atticus
right?
Records, yeah.
Years in the making.
Years in the making, of course. Something that was conceived so long ago, I oftentimes think it's better to let it exist in my mind's eye even than in reality, because I never wanted to be a guy focused on distribution or manufacturing or
of other songwriters and other records. And
I love helping other people, but
yeah.
I never wanted to be a record label guy, a business side of it.
See, I remember you talking to me about it and being like, you know, every artist that's on the quote unquote label is a shareholder, if you will, where it's a, you know, a communal type record label where, let's say, you know, this artist goes out, lives in a cabin for a month, writes this record, and it's not commercially accepted or doing as well. Another artist that's on the label that puts out something that's a little bit more palatable, that commercially that does better, they outweigh each other and lift, you know, so it keeps it going where everybody kind of owns a share of it.
Yeah.
I love that idealist kind of, like, I love, you know what I mean?
It was an ideology. The idea was, of course, coming from a rough history of knowing what it was like in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, and watching album sales plummet because of illegal downloading, watching radio conglomerates buying 800 stations and having one guy through legal payola make sure that their album got played in cahoots with one of the four big record labels. And the whole industry became so much inbreeding that it was hard for independent artists. So back then, in the early 2000s, right after I got rid of Paleo Sun, which was a live music venue at the time and had some really great world-class artists coming through, the idea was someone's got to rethink, someone has to grow with the time and create a label that really benefits the artist. And the mission statement always was integrity for the artist, legacy for the song, and artistry for the project. And the groundwork, the foundation was going to be set at, if you listen to a great songwriter for a long time, whether you worked with him, whether you played shows with him, whether you worked on an album with them, if you generated a relationship that was based on so much more than just seeing a kid at a show, signing him, giving him a small bonus, working his ass off for 2 years, taking as much 90% of his cut as you could, and then, like Clive Davis said, burning, you know, make pop music disposable so it would go away so you could sell another one. I wanted to do the exact opposite. How do you cultivate relationships with great artists that you believe in, write, arrange, produce, work with them equitably, bring as much as you could to the table yourself, but have so much player manager stock in it that not only could you be a bandmate, but a mentor and a protege at the same time, a leader and a follower at the same time, a writer and a co-writer at the same time. Be what I always needed when I was younger. There was no one out there to help anybody. No one would come to you it's kind of like surf camp. I go out every day, and I remember struggling in the water for years, wondering what the little secrets were to do a bottom turn cutback. And you take these 8-year-old kids out in the morning and on foam boards, and you just plainly speak through the process of what to do with the weight on your heels or your feet. And I know I just topic jumped tremendously there to surfing, but instruction is really what people crave.
Dude, mentorship is one of the most underrated things these days.
How to do something that you want to aspire to, and we need that. And in certain fields, it's non-existent. In the music industry, you can admire someone's work, but very rarely will they release those secrets to you because it's so personal. It's not that they're hiding them from you. And then we all go on this tech journey. How can I find the best mic, the best sound? And that's a 10-year journey or 15-year journey. How should I be engineering this?
Dude, Tone Quest or Infinite.
And some of my favorite things to do now are go back to when I didn't care about the Tone Quest and listen to what I was putting out, just throwing spaghetti against the wall. And I go back now and listen to those things, and as bad as they are, I love that I didn't care. Like, God, that guitar sound is awful, but I can't help but like it.
But it resonates.
I can't help.
Does it resonate or not?
I didn't care. Yeah, I didn't care that I didn't know that I didn't like that sound then. So it's part of the puzzle. It's there. It's built into the pie. I can't take the cinnamon out of the bun now. You know, the blueberries are baked in, so eat the blueberries. And if you wish they were rhubarb, too bad. It's blueberries. And when you can go back over 25 years, you do have a lot of those moments. Atticus was, especially around the time I'd been signed and dropped, and you think when you're young, you think that when you play some large shows at some coliseums that you're never going to go backwards. But you do, and you lose distribution and things change. And at a young age, 29 or 30, I thought I'd never do it again, and that was the Black Sox. With, small successes, regional airplay, and, a lot of people dug it. And, of course, I was lucky enough to work at a radio station, and those DJs all branched out, and they couldn't wait to call and say, what are you doing next? And I could kind of fast track. I could beat out the big four by sneaking in my copy of something. And then my brother comes along, who's 10 years younger than me, and he's got a beautiful falsetto voice, and he's a damn good writer. And when I was about to hang it up, he calls and says, hey, man, I got a management deal, and they want to hire studio musicians to go to this world-class studio, but I think, you and Matt and Seth from the Black Sox, you've been playing together for 10, 12 years, and you guys are the tightest three-piece I know. Can you come up with me? I bet we rehearsed that album 3 times, flew to New York, and knocked out a really great album, and that was Yesterday's Love Song 1. Of course, I love my brother dearly, and we had a wonderful time, and Matt and Seth too. That was the closest we ever got to that band that the four of you could walk, through the subway tunnels in New York City, and people just turned and looked and were like, that's got to be a rock and roll band. And when we got on stage, we had that same effect, and independent movie guys were wanting to use our soundtracks on independent movies, and that was a lot of fun. We did our second album at Southern Tracks. We went the other way and decided to work at a Brendan O'Brien place. Always 2-inch tape. And that's something else we should touch on, was that when things were going digital hard and fast, I rebelled against it greatly, and still have. And therefore, when everyone tells you...
I have a love-hate thing with it.
When everyone tells you you're doing something crazy, I think you're doing something right.
Yeah.
I've learned in my life that when the majority of people don't like something, you should like what they don't like. Maybe
a lot of times it's because of the difficulty. Like anything that's pure, unmessed with, straight analog, or we were talking about tape as an example, but anything that has that difficulty that doesn't go with the times of being technologically advanced and easier, usually have this kind of purity and heartbeat to it. There's a reason why people keep going back to 2-inch tape.
They do.
I did my solo record at 2-inch tape.
And look at the results, my God.
But now I have this love-hate thing with it, man. Like, I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit of doing some digital stuff.
You're not wrong, because you do get to a place where you accept you got to do both. There's no doubt I'm going to get bass and drums on 2-inch tape, and I love Neve 33609 compressor limiters, and I insist on working at places that have stuff you just can't find.
Yeah.
And people can tell you all day long that there's a plug-in that gets really close or that is just as good, and they can be, but there's magic in those wheels, man.
Absolutely,
There's
man.
gremlins. There is headroom in when you're using a Tree Audio submarine board, or when you're using a Telenic or a 100. There's magic in every one of those capacitors.
It's like a fifth member of the band.
It is, and when you seek out a studio that has the reputation for having that, you know, and we can all name 5 right now, and I'm very proud to have said I've worked at 3 of them. Hopefully Sound City is next, but now it's in Dave Grohl's house, so I don't know if I get to do that anytime soon. But when you do that, then when you're working with an engineer you trust, and that's something, of course, I love too, working with, just like playing with friends, I love working with people who are friends and you understand each other. And
I consider the engineer a fifth member of the band as well.
Absolutely is.
It's their input. It's impossible for their input and their thought process and their creativity to not weave into your record.
It is. It's important too. They and if you have that understanding that you just say, listen, throw all the ideas you have, because some of them are going to be good ones, but as long as you just don't bristle at me saying no to 9 out of 10 of them. As a producer, now,
a lot of engineers want to be producers.
A lot of engineers want to be producers, and if you have that conversation up front, as a producer, now if you're working on your own, and it gets even more complicated, as you know, when you're writing, arranging, producing, and working with that engineer, you have a lot of decisions going on. You're trying to think about.
It's a lot of hats, man.
You're thinking about what part to play on the piano, and whether the guy whose schedule just changed that was flying in to play the cello can go before the guy who already showed up, who's only an hour away, can play the pedal steel.
Dude, it's left brain, right brain
all day long.
to the max.
And when you get it lined up in your head, I think, for me at least, I like to cultivate a very relaxed atmosphere where everybody's contributing what they can. Let it all hit. Let it all hit. Throw the paint at the canvas. The canvas isn't destroyed. Fortunately, we're in a medium that you can have cutting room floor. And you do have editing. You have reference mixes. You can do that stuff.
That brings up a question for you. When you approach recording music, whether it's your own or producing somebody else's record, how important is it to set the scene?
Oh man, it's so crucial. And I can only speak from I've worked with other producers, of course. I can tell you, and we all know engineers are a rare breed. They're very much alike to themselves.
Absolutely.
They're a different breed. The word engineer means something.
Yeah.
If they weren't engineering music, they would be engineering electronic capacitors, or they'd be
running trains, or like an actual engineer. It is very.
They don't speak
they're
much.
Niche.
They're niche. And I think the relationship with an engineer is crucial.
And the weirder they are, the more I want them to be my engineer.
The ones that don't speak at all are the best. And it's like pulling teeth to get them to even tell you whether they added 4 dB of level on that one backup track.
When you get an engineer that's too much engineer, you almost want, then you want their input.
You do.
Isn't that weird?
And they don't give it to you.
When you hire an engineer, you just want them to be a great engineer and just let you do your thing.
The first step.
If they're too good at that, if they're too weird like that, you're like, so I don't know, man. What do you think? And when they don't like fucking stroke you, you're like, oh, damn it.
First critical success factor to being a producer of your own project is never ask the engineer what he thinks.
Man.
Just stay away from that. But to set the tone, for me personally, I have a few thoughts. I've done some, The Devil's Dove, Calling All Moonlight Thieves and Lovers was done here at my house. I always loved bands that did the house recording, whether it was Led Zeppelin's Bram Ra, or whether it was Rolling Stones' Exile on Main Street, was done at Nelcote. I think there's a magic you get. So what I did was I borrowed from the things I learned from other studios on 5 or 6 or maybe 10 albums before then, and decided, okay, isolation is really important. So I'm going to get the best amp I can, put it upstairs, put a horse blanket over it. Learned a lot about ambient mics hanging from 20 feet up at Bearsville. So we did that in the stairwell for the drums. But this is
for the recording of the Devil's Dove.
This is for the recording, yeah. And then when your friends show up and you've played with these guys your whole life, and everybody's just there to have a good time, you're going to get great results. And that's what it was. And that's what I would like every recording. You've got to be professional. You've got to, especially if you're spending money on a studio and spending money on session guys, you've got your timeline. Again, two hats. The most professional you can be, itineraries. People always are shocked when I send them a production itinerary and they're like, what? We're following some guidelines? We're going to try. We're going to try to stick to this itinerary. But when I meet with an artist or if I'm writing with someone, for me, the most important thing is that I understand where they're coming from so completely. We even talk about the theme. Where were you in your life? What are you shooting for? We talk about reference listening materials. What drum sound are you hearing in your head? What, there's
so important to do that on the front end,
every
man.
single thing. Yeah.
And even if the answers from the artist are,
I don't know.
That's crucial to know.
Let me show you some. Yeah. If you don't know what
you get to figure out how much they need, they're depending on leaning on you.
That's right.
During the experience.
That's right. Because there are long-standing epic examples of the best hi-hat sound ever recorded, piano sounds. And if you have them kind of cataloged in your head as a producer, you can show them to an artist and say, are you fond of this really loose, sloppy, late 50s Slingerland kick sound? Or do you like this tighter, DW flat mallet sound? On piano, are you digging this big grand sound, or do you want this upright? Or are you just really cool with this Kurzweil 2550 simulated key sound? On and on through every instrument. And then we talk about amps, and then we talk about players.
Yeah.
This solo right here, I'm envisioning something that's a lot less tricky. I think it needs to be very slow hand style. So
this is what's interesting to me,
through
though.
the course of a year, you can establish, and oftentimes this happens with someone who has 4 or 5 basic verse song ideas. They need bridges, they need chorus, and what happens at the end is they're very satisfied with where it went because we talked about the whole thing. So no surprises, really.
See, this is the thing. So matched by that, the yang to that setup
is utter chaos.
Let's all get in a room. Like, when I think about it, it's like I have to fight over preparing.
Yeah, you do.
Like I even like the lighting a certain way, there's this diva in me that's, what I mean? You know this.
Of course.
And it's like to let go of a lot of that is really hard for me to do.
The cowboy
divas. Every time I do that, though, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
Because that's when the real magic happens. When you take your neuroses out of the equation.
Sure.
Or you at least recognize that you have them.
Yeah.
Try your hardest to put them aside. And then if you get in a situation in the studio where you can actually let that go, the thing right on the other side of that is usually the keep or take.
And I was going to follow up by saying, after all that preparation is done, just like any kind of training, no one wants to see what it takes to train for a guy to do a triple Lindy off a diving board.
Yeah.
But when they do one, you're like, wow, the human species is pretty amazing. That's
incredible.
Whether it's that or a rodeo rider hanging onto a bull for 8 seconds, or a guy jacking a grand slam, it all looks routine. Experts make things look easy.
There's always 10,000 hours before every single one of those things.
And a book written about exactly that, the tipping
Malcolm
point.
Gladwell.
And he knows what he's talking about. When the preparation has to be put in, you've got to earn it. And that's where adversity breeds strength, because the process is so difficult. You know better than anybody how much struggle it is just to write every morning. It reminds me of Glenn Fry talking about Jackson Brown, his upstairs roommate.
I know, I love that story,
when his label
man.
said, "How do you? We need original songs from the Eagles," and he said, "How do you do that?" And all the while he was running upstairs to tell downstairs to tell Jackson Brown to shut up because he was banging out the same part.
He said he would hear Jackson Brown get up in the morning, the tea kettle go off.
Yep.
Pour himself some tea, get in front of the piano, work up that first verse melody over and over again. Then hear a pause, tea kettle go off again, more tea.
Same lines, change one word, change one note.
Dude, it is.
And then it hit him. That's how you write songs.
That's how you do it.
Painstaking.
Grind it out.
Grind it out. Muscle memory and hard work. So going back to when you're back in the studio after all that inner stuff that we have to do on our own, and forget about in this world what an artist has to do on his own through social media, which I avoid. And
That's what I was about to say. You don't have to.
I stay away from it's not self-aggrandizement. I'm just lazy, man, and I'm kind of burnt out.
But you're not lazy. I don't buy that, man.
Well, I don't tell the story.
I think it's specific. I think you have a long game vision that has disciplined it from somebody that is trying to promote a record right now and is in that world.
Yeah.
Admire. Because I would love nothing more than to just record my music at home
and leave it
and just
never show it to anybody. That's
I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
it's hard.
I don't even know if I could do, because live performance is how I make my money. It's like,
yes,
to have a batch of songs that are recorded and just sound, if I get them to a place where I love, to not go out and perform them.
Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, I have, and when you talk about that body of work, it's going on 5 or 6 albums. Right?
I know, man.
Maybe 70 songs, and I
remember a year ago being like, dude, let me help you, like, or let's get together and let's just stream your shit, like, and then now I look back and I'm like, want to tell the me a year ago to shut the fuck up. Well, it's like, because you're onto something, man. You're onto something. I just can't pinpoint.
I don't know what it is either.
I don't know what it is, but I admire it from afar.
I just know that in my life, like the guy, whether it's your grandfather and he was a Jesuit thinker, and my dad, and just hard men that kind of, man, it really was kind of a speak softly and carry a big stick. And of course, I know I love conversation and I love to talk about what I'd like to do with things. But down deep, I'm a firm believer in just quietly do, whether it's fixing a car or chopping down a tree or raising a family or studying angelic numerology, you just do it. And one day, if you understand it or know how to do it well, I don't have it in me to show. It's funny.
That's the thing, though, man. Songwriting is different than chopping down a tree.
It is.
The similarities are I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
It's there.
I'm on the same wavelength, but it's like John Prine said this before. You can write a song and put it in the top shelf of a drawer and not show it to anybody.
And that's how I feel, man. Like, I would never want to show anybody the tree I chopped down, although that to me is a greater accomplishment than writing an album.
Dude, I'm with you.
That's how I feel about it. And fixing...
but the discipline to not show it, to know you have that gem
but
of a song.
But I don't know. Because, again...
you do. You've got a few gems in a drawer somewhere.
We all have a couple, we think, but we don't know. And I'm also terrified of hearing or finding out that
what I'm trying to get
my whole
to.
life's work is just an enormous pile of garbage. So... That's
why I came to you a year ago and was like, it's not.
Yeah, and that helps.
And it needs, people need to hear it.
And I'm very lucky. Of course, we are as friends, because you only have a few of them that will look you in the eye and they won't bullshit you. Will say, man, this stuff is good. You got to pursue it or let people hear it. That does feel good, but it makes it even more challenging to say, no, I'm not going to let anybody hear it. Or it's not that even. I'm not being selfish with it. I'm kind of...
From afar, it seems like I'm trying to pinpoint, is it this crazy noble quality of discipline? Or is there this bit of insecurity of like, I don't want to have to deal with the response this might get?
It's more of the first. I've always had...
That's real. I mean, that's an honest question,
sure.
And it's both. Hard to answer, man.
There are both. I have a thick enough skin. Certainly, I've heard enough critiques of, 1 out of 10 people are going to like what you do no matter how good it is. So the other 9, whether you see it in the reaction of their face when they walk out of a club when you're playing it, it can be your own family members that just don't think you sing as well as your brother, which is something that I have contended with my whole life. and it makes me go, maybe I won't sing on this. Well, no, I have to. I have a vision for this. I'm just going to sing so much that I find my true voice, and I'm going to make it the best I can do, and that's all I can do. And if I'm content with it, and that brings up the other part. I love to challenge. I like to take the things I can't do to places I know I can't do. And if I push it so hard that I mess up, I often enjoy leaving them in because on many fronts, I'm a really big fan of the one and done. I love live takes. I want people to hear, if anyone ever did hear stuff, I would love for them to hear the way it really sounded. And as much as I love to produce an album and make albums sound great, and I have, for myself and others, my brother, there's something to me very, very real about a phone recording or a one mic, a one track, two track recording of the way it was supposed to be delivered with all of its squeaks and bells and flaws and hiccups. And that's very real to me. At the end of what we do every day, and then day turning, I had a lyric once in a song that was something like, and I believe it was borrowed from a George Orwell book, Time Machine, I think it was, but the line was night follows day like the flapping of a black wing. And that was his, and I love the way great authors make you see, taste, hear what they're writing. Hemingway.
Nothing beats that.
Hemingway described what an oyster tastes like, and I included that in a line of a song, tasting oysters with Hemingway's vision. If you can imbue music or a song, or especially lyricism, with a magical wordcraft that, it's without being I don't mean to follow that with a lyric of mine and make it sound like I write magical lyrics, but because the other secret to great music writing is humility. You have to know that you're just
and
at
editing.
The end of the day,
it's
in anything.
too.
Yeah.
No, I said with editing.
Oh yeah.
It's like the rewrite. Like what I've learned about really great songwriters, and even just writers in general, when they make it. When you read it, the first time you read something that hits you, just like that line hit you.
Yeah.
You think that just off the cuff. That was just stream of consciousness. The way they're learning more about songwriters and writers in general, they might luck out and have some lines like that where it just comes to them in a stream of consciousness in front of a typewriter.
Yeah, sometimes.
So much of it, like the Jason Isbells of the world and the Ryan Adams of the world and these other kind of popular songwriters now that are digging deep and cranking out some good content. It's I can't believe I just said content. See, that's how much of the social media world that I'm in. I want to kick my own ass for saying that. It's like me saying brand or content. I've been watching too much Gary Vee on Facebook. It's just fucking killing me.
It's like it's like when a promoter, when they're doing a show, because sometimes I get stuck in a tour management thing, trying to help a artist that I know play a fun show somewhere, and it reminds me of when they ask me about their visibility and their hits, and I'm just like, man, if we're starting there, we're in trouble already, But that's what the world has turned into.
Dude, I've been trying to get a new booking agent right now, and the first thing they want to see is followers and how many tickets, how many in every place they're trying to book you. How many tickets can you sell? How many followers? What's your reach? And it's like, do you want to hear the record first? Like, I don't know, hear the music. But it's a business. I get it, man. It's just, and that's where
where I go off the rails. It's a business, and then that's when I go, you know what? But it shouldn't be. It is. But as far as my contribution to it, and one of the reasons I've always faltered in going full bore into my vision of Atticus as this really great cooperative label with the best songwriters that have that have ever been around, and leaving a mark on the world. Anyone can break a record. Anyone can break an artist. For the past 15 years, have wanted to break an entire market. I've called it the new Liverpool sound. We've got this edgy blend of soul and surf punk and pop grass. There's a ton. And I could name 15 right now that do that. And I always wanted to be kind of the spearhead that said, all these guys need help. Someone's got to do it. And if we don't, no one's ever going to hear it. And then as soon as I think that, I realize I can't even let my stuff be heard. How am I going to help someone else get theirs heard, But content, followers, it seems antithetical to me with, when I'm outside in this beautiful countryside and I can hear my rooster crowing.
Dude, I just kicked back. This is great.
It feels good, doesn't it?
I'm literally sitting back on the second story outdoor porch of the Tripp Murphy compound.
Vinlandia.
Vinlandia? I love it.
That's
overlooking the marsh. When I pulled in, there was a white crane flying across the marshland. When we get done with this, I'm going to shoot a shotgun out here just because I haven't shot one in 10 years.
We should shoot that and shoot some video. You can take some captures and kind of get the feel for it. But and going back to the bucolic splendor of your surroundings, I think is as important to the artistic process. And I hate calling it that because it sounds so pretentious, but
That's what it is.
I get more done. I mean, I've written songs. Some of the best songs I've ever written were clearly handed to me by the universal laws of nature. I mean, I wrote a song called Wild Irish Rose, and I was quite literally trudging through 2 feet of snow with a 1964 Guild X50 in the snow, and a fox came running out of its hedgerow in Glenmore, Pennsylvania, and he came out and kept on getting closer as if to say, please keep playing that beautiful melody. And I did, and he wasn't scared off. And it's moments like that in nature. A song called Green Fairy on Calling All Moonlight Thieves and Lovers was about me making homemade batches of absinthe.
I remember.
For a big party. And I was like, you can't test the recipe you don't try a new recipe on your friends who come over for dinner.
You can.
You can't do it with absinthe.
You can.
So I had 4 or 5 glasses very quickly, and it was June, 4 a.m., and the fireflies were absolutely, it wasn't tremendously hallucinogenic, but I was feeling that really nice, tight absinthe buzz, and it turned into a great song. One more recently that I've written on piano, I love standing outside at night, and I do stargaze quite a bit, and I'm endlessly wondering what's going on out there because it's just so vast, to the point where I'm almost autistic in my pursuit. I mean, I'm keeping moleskin journals with equations on the cosmic mass of the soul that relate to the expansion of the universe, and I'm trying to mathematically quantify them.
You're digging, man.
But I don't know if
digging.
I don't have the math skills to quantify my own theories, so I might have to send them off to somebody one day, and who knows, maybe they'll be right. But
you be sure to keep those moleskin journals in the time capsule along with this 10 records that you're sitting on.
Oh yeah,
You might be onto something, man.
they're full of yeah. Well, the theoried principle behind the cosmic mass of the soul in writing is that the degradation of society is inversely proportional to the expansion of the universe. So I believe that as the universe expands, it is stretching it thin, and therefore it makes sense to me that degradation would occur. Degradation being the breakdown of atomic structure of all things, including the social constructs in society. And I don't have it in front of me, but I've got some constants and some equations to go with it, based on E equals mc squared. If all the energy in the universe and all matter in the universe is constant, then it would make sense to me that if the universe is expanding and stretching, there should be a coordinating equation to go with that.
Do you think it's literally expanding, or do you think we're just discovering more of it? Is that, you know what I mean? Is it actually getting bigger, or are we just discovering more and more of it exist?
Well, both. I know we are discovering. We've taken our depth of field telescope space to 13.4 billion years, which they believe is the origination. And there's a couple other quantum theories, but the one that still stands up the most is the Big Bang, and they do believe there was a monumental. But now there's new theories about how it might be expanding and contracting, which to me makes tons of sense because everything is hyperbolic. I don't think anything is not cyclical in the universe.
Sure.
With that being said, when I go outside, of course, I've got to tear my mind away from physics and the thoughts about matter and the universe. And then I've got to switch to the other side of my brain and go artistic. And if I see stars through the trees, I can only hope that comes out something like, the stars shine like lights in the trees above, like white, blurry, silky doves. If I can say that the stars shine in the trees above like white, blurry, silky doves, I feel good about what I just observed. And then it's on. Then the race is on. Then I'm inspired. I'm a mad chemist trying to figure out how to cure malaria. Not with test tubes, but I got to get to the piano or a bass or a guitar, and then it's on. But I usually sit there long enough to get the second one. And I know I got to keep this thing going, and I know the chorus is coming, and then so the second line would be something like, all right, maybe I could repeat it because it's pretty impactful. The stars, they shine, and then I realize I can't say in the trees above because I wanted to rhyme white, blurry, silky doves. I'm going to take it somewhere else. And the stars, they shine in the trees. So I pause in the middle and then just hit in the trees like sequins on a black silk breeze. And if I can get two opening lines of a song that say the stars, they shine in the trees above like white, blurry, silky doves, and the stars, they shine in the trees like sequins on a black silk breeze, I know that the rest just has to be there. And very rarely do they come to you in those moments of triumph so those are the gifts. Those are those universal gifts, I think, that you have to wait for and be patient. I can't press them. I can't make them. And I don't even think they come from me. Something, some cosmic entity, some ascended master, God, angels, which I believe heartily in, said, you know what, this is what we spent so much time creating. This is our music. We made this song that you're looking at. And that's why I think the moon sings. I think flora and fauna have a rhythm and a cadence and a melody to them all. I think everything has that synesthesia in it, the color and sound.
Sure,
man. It must.
There's a frequency to everything.
There is. And we're electrochemical beings comprised of mostly water and nitrogen, and we're moved by the magnetics, just like tides. And I think if you open yourself up to it one way or another, and I know in my life that the more closed off I am, if I'm having a bad day or a bad week, or if you get stuck in this world too much, and sometimes you have to, mortgage, car, why do I have to go to work to buy gas to put in my car to go to work again? Like, what's that cycle about? Can't I stop going to work, to stop making money, to stop buying gas, to stop filling up my car, to go back to work? There is a better way, and we spend our whole lives trying to figure it out. And then when you get to the end on your deathbed, you never say, I wish I had one more day to go to work. And that takes us down an entirely different path, of course. But
yeah, man, I'm curious about because with me, with songwriting, as soon as I get a couplet, like a 2-line, like what you're talking about, that's definitely a road post for me to follow.
Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, top me off.
You don't have to move anything. Coffee break, folks, for you listening at home.
Yeah, when I get 2 lines, it's off to the races, like you said. And as soon as I get 2 lines and I finish that first verse and get a chorus, then it's really on. But then I always hit this roadblock after that first chorus, maybe a second verse, and I tag that chorus. I'm like, I'm stuck.
Oh, yeah.
You know how I think I have notebooks and hard drives full of songs that are 3/4 of the way done.
That's right. And
That's-
you should.
I'm sure every songwriter out there can agree on that shit.
Yeah. Oh God. And then the worst result is and this goes back to true art is never completed, it's just turned in, is how many songs I know I have literally in the can that have like the same verse doubled just because I was too lazy to come up. I was like, that's really damn good. No one's listening to the verse anyways right now. The chorus is
Nobody's listening to any of it right now, man. You need to fucking put it out there.
No one's going to listen to any of this, and when they do, I don't care. So
you know what I think I stole from you was that exact thing of re-tagging the first verse at the very end of the song.
Yeah, man, it's the serpent biting its own tail.
Dude, I think on the Great Divide, I think there's 2 songs where I tag the first verse again, and I think I stole that from you. I remember hearing you do that, the 2-chord troubadour.
Yeah, man.
You know, it's just like, man.
Well, if you stole it from me, I stole it from someone else. It's nothing. There's nothing new under the sun, as we know, and I appreciate you saying that. And of course, I know I've learned so much from you as well. So as we get into this masturbatory phase
you,
of our,
me, you, me. Throw me that lighter.
There are unconventional things you can do, and I think you just touched on that as well. I've spent the bulk of my writing career trying to take it out of the box, whether it was how many 7 or 8 minute songs can I write? Who cares about song length? How many times can I write a song without a chorus? How can I make a instrumental part be the chorus by repeating it 3 times between 3 very succinct verses? Can you pull off, how many songs can I write with 2 chords only? Can you write a song with 2 chords and make it not kill the person listening? Those things can be done.
Absolutely.
They're hard to do, but those challenges, I believe, make you a better writer. And because of that threshold of fearlessness that excites me. I mean,
I think your whole approach is
like
that.
jumping motorcycles.
I think you start there.
I like jumping on alligators. I like swimming with sharks. I like catching snakes at night. Songwriting should be a dangerous adventure, and that's why the money, I once heard through a mutual friend of ours that the production label songwriting team that they were with could care less about the quality of the songs that he was turning in. They were looking at computer algorithms.
I know, man.
Based on the layout.
Heartbreaking.
And that was heartbreaking for me. And I could almost feel that that's where it was going. And the proof was in the pudding as recently as yesterday, as I was driving down the road with my son and we put on a country station and I heard a song that had the exact same silhouette. And I know it was the same writing team. I know it was the same label. I know it was, and they're just churning them out. And that to me, if that's what I'm up against, I'm not playing ball on their field.
I don't even think you're in that game.
No, I'm playing badminton and they're playing
know.
football. You know what I mean? I can't play badminton against football players. So I'll just keep smacking the ball. I'll keep smacking the shuttlecock as high as I can in the air and getting tackled while I'm waiting for it to come down by a 270-pound linebacker. That is.
I remember the first time.
Me versus the industry, right there.
I remember the first time hearing your songs, man. Like we'd get together at my house, or I'd see you out playing somewhere, and like we'd be talking about like song structure, or like I'm like, hey, like I'm trying to find a part to play along with you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, go back to that first verse part or whatever, and you'd go back into it, and I'm like, no, the first verse. He's like, oh, this whole thing is the first verse.
That's right.
And I'd be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like the freedom of that.
Well, I think you coined the phrase that always stuck with me, and this is why we're such good friends, is because we can say whatever we want to each other. But I always loved when you said, that was either the best or the worst thing I've ever heard.
Hold on, we got to tell that story. This is great. So I'm on this songwriter showcase list at this place called Tez on the River in Wilmington, North Carolina. And I think you were playing out, but hadn't really done a showcase in a while.
I had not, yeah.
And had some new songs.
Yeah.
And we're like, do you think I could get on that bill? I was like, dude, of course, let me hit him up.
And you were actually at that time helping me record the live one takes of The Morning Moon, which was all live,
right.
and those were the songs from that.
So I reach out to the person that was kind of like putting on the showcase. I'm like, hey, you know Tripp Murphy, right? I was like, yeah, he's got some new songs. Can you slide him in? Yeah, no problem. So we get up I go pick you up that day. I think we go to the bar for a little bit.
We did.
And we head down there, and I think I was playing last. And
we crushed Budweiser's out of their walk-in fridge.
Of course.
For the first 3 artists.
And so we listen to the first three people on the bill. You get up there on a stool. I'll never forget this, man. Everybody else I think was standing. You go up there. Guitar doesn't even have an input, I don't think. You were miking the guitar, just very, very you.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, this is fucking great. And you sit down on a stool, and you're kind of looking down, set up the microphone, so you really don't have to look at the audience really. And you're like, say something. I'm paraphrasing. It was something like, oh shit, what was it? It's something like, something like, this is a window into my dreams, or a window into my soul, or something.
Stare into my soul for a while.
I think that's exactly what it was.
It was something.
And I was like, buckle up, people. Like, and so I'm sitting there in the back, just like, this is about to be great. So you play the first one, very 2-chord troubadour, you know.
I think it was Shooting Angels, maybe.
And at the end of it, I'm looking at the crowd, and they don't know what, you know. Of course, there's applause. It's a songwriter showcase.
Yeah.
There's applause, and the look on their face where they're like, this is
confusion. You can say it. It's utter confusion.
It was
perplexed.
The audience collectively, along with me, is like, I don't know if this is the best or worst thing I've ever seen.
And you told me, and I loved it very much.
And so you play the next song, and then the reaction after the second song was like, "Oh, that was great! Like this is a thing.
We get it.
We get it." So the first song was like it was a coin flip type thing, like tensions elevated. You know, like,
what's going on here?
Why?
My GPS took me on the wrong road.
Exactly.
But there's really crazy stuff on this road.
Yeah,
I should have taken the highway.
Do we have to cross the river here?
We're
I don't
in the jungle.
know. Like,
you're in the jungle.
This is a Huckleberry Finn raft. I'm not used to this.
That's right.
I like a concrete bridge.
Uncomfortable.
And you took them there, man. And at the end of it, I do my set after that. I even think I came up on the last song and sang with you.
You did. Events Are Like Horses.
Yeah. So we get done and we come out, and you're just
and
like,
you killed it, by the way. Of course, you killed that
thank
show.
You, and I remember we get done and we leave, and you're like, so what do you think, man? And just from the most honest place, it's either the best or worst thing I've ever seen.
I think I was crying. I think I was tearing up over the lines of course, Events Are Like Horses is about my sons growing up so fast, and no matter how much time, how much pride I took in being the best father I could be. And, working at night, getting more time than most dads, no golf on weekends. It was wake up on 2 hours of sleep if I was running a club or a music venue or bartending or playing shows. It was wake up, who cares about sleep? Be with your sons and your family and enjoy the day. And one day I turned around and I noticed how before they had grown up, I wondered what it would be like. And it was based on something my oldest son, of course, who I'm very close to. All three I am, but he has special needs, cerebral palsy and epilepsy. And when he was very young, I'm talking, 20, 22 years ago, when he was 3 or 4, I said, hold your horses to him. And his reply was, Daddy, my horses are getting away. He was just a child letting me know that he wanted me to hurry up doing something I was doing. And to me, that is a complete metaphor about adults getting stuck in their phones. And it's so tragic what's happening now. There's children growing up without parents because they're so focused on their next Instagram post. And I don't mean to sound dated, but I'm certainly young enough to have a smartphone, use it all the time. But I pay very close attention to not let it interrupt the activity that I have with other human beings. And I've tried to parlay that out to my family. And it was just about that. One day, these children that you worship, and they worship you, events are like horses, and sometimes they run. And when they run, they're gone. And you can't get it back. It'll be different. And that's important, not to get Dr. Phil about raising children, but no one could have ever told me how fast 10 and 5 and 1 month old would turn into 25, 21, and 15 years old, with all of them with their own jobs, their own college careers, their own homes. And they don't follow you around like little ducks in a row waiting for you to say something brilliant or fart really loud when they pull your finger, or the best time you can have with little boys or little girls. They become men on your watch, and all you can do is hope that you left them with great life lessons and a great example. And you have to make mistakes. You're going to make a ton of them. And when you do, you have to be honest about those mistakes. Tell them, be honest about the snafus and the pitfalls that you found that could have derailed you permanently, and say, guys, and we have a thing in my family, and my sons could tell you right now if you asked them what kind of the modus operandi is, and that's take the good and leave the bad. No one's perfect. So if you go into this downward spiral, a family is a weird thing. You got 5 people in the same house, they start growing up, you've got hormonal teenagers, you've got parents stressing about mortgages and their second job or their hobbies and trying to fit that into a vacation schedule versus work. And it can become a cyclonic, what do we do next to make sure that flat tire gets changed, the lawn gets mowed, the dishes get done, you all get to school on time with your underwear on, with your pants on frontwards. And meanwhile, I had too many beers last night at a rock and roll show. That all comes into, that rears its ugly head.
Dude, I remember seeing like the first time we met,
it's
and
how
when
you
I
balance
find out
it.
that you had 3 kids, I'm like, how, dude, what? You have 3 kids?
Yeah.
And the details of all of that. I remember, like, for years, I was just like, dude, how does he do it?
Yeah.
How does he do it?
Yeah.
But it just shows like the calling as a songwriter and a performer that like you had to incorporate that along with raising your sons. And I remember watching from afar, I would tell other people this, I'm sure I've told you before too, just the pedestal that I thought of you on, of how important it was to instill those values into your sons and to be there for them. And no matter what you did the night before, you were cooking or taking them to school or doing breakfast in the morning, and there was family this.
Yeah.
And
it was
the work-life balance was just impressive, man.
Well, it was easy because I love, for me, and I love that you probably more than anybody got to see it because you were playing at the, you played regularly at the Calico Room.
Yeah.
And we were working together weekly on an album project. So it was easy for you to see it. I think so many people never got to see that. And you wouldn't believe how many times and you do have to get to a place where you just don't care what people think, but I can't tell you how many times people have seen just a single snapshot of you at 2 a.m, closing down your music venue nightclub. And it's just, you're rubber stamping drunks out the front door.
Sure.
And if you can't beat them, join them. There's only one sane way to get through a war, and that's to shoot your gun.
Yep.
I mean, you don't have to, but you're not going to survive as long. So with all that being said, I had to be present for whatever was in front of me. And most importantly, that was my family. So no matter what I had to be, if I had to be present because we had a great artist playing 2 nights in a row, and you're a general in the trenches and you got to take care of critical minutia as far as paperwork and ordering and whatever that goes along with the bar business. But then you got to take care of the musical side. And as a musician yourself, you're also struggling greatly with the fact that you really wish you were playing a show somewhere, not helping another, you're like, man, what am I doing? I got this all backwards. I'm looking for a snake cable right now in the bottom of a dirty closet covered in empty kegs when I really wish I was sound checking myself. What's going on here? But you do that, and like so many great people have said, if you're going to be a janitor, be the best janitor. If you're going to be a CEO, be the best CEO. Do whatever job is in front of you as best you can. I treated parenting like that, and I made sure that I was, and I'm sure that I had moments when I wasn't at my best. But I really focused on, if the 1% snapshot that people saw, backstage at a music venue, the other 99% was, given tubby time and doing homework and making dinner, and really focusing on a family structure that was strong enough for them to feel well adjusted and comfortable. And I think that is the secret to becoming adjusted in this world, is you just have to have a strong backbone behind you, and you have to have support. And I, of course, because of the love I have for my children and my family, I wanted them, and it seems to have, I didn't know what would happen. I didn't know whether the mix of daddy being a rock and roll guy and then being a fun dad, I didn't know whether they'd end up all being covered in tats and playing shows at 15 or on a stunt team like I was, running away from home. They didn't. They all became A students and scholarship athletes, and so something worked.
Dude, it's incredible
And
to see, man.
maybe they rebelled against, hopefully they rebelled against some of the things that happened. We definitely led a gypsy lifestyle, especially when they were younger. But man, it all comes down to being present with whoever you're with,
man.
and doing the best. Man, being positivity is a lost art in this world. And I've had people look me right in the eye and say, why do you help people? It's never going to work out. People are awful. They're always going to be bad. And I just don't follow that line. I think the more...
I don't either, man.
You don't.
Every time I run into you, whether it's you delivering speakers to somebody because they need to borrow it or have us, every time it's like, dude, you just went 2 hours out of your way to do this. It's a constant reminder of, even if nothing comes back from it, you do it. You just do something good. If someone needs help, whether they ask for it or whether you recognize that they need help, it's really important to take that first step and offer it. Dude, it's like, it reminds me, I saw this speaker that was talking about responsibility and how it's just a combination of two words, a response and an ability. And if you have the ability
to respond,
what's your response going to be?
Sure.
If somebody needs speakers for a 50s dance
sure.
that have nothing to do with,
that's right. Yeah.
Do you have the ability? Yes.
Yeah.
Well, what's your response going to be? And the character in that response, I just think, man, you just deliver with spades over and over.
I try.
And when I see it, I'm just kind of like, it just reminds me to like, man, I can do better.
It can lead to problems because it can unfortunately overburden you, and then unfortunately the 1 person out of 10 that you can't help that you might have overpromised. And I do try not to say that I can do something if I can't, but there certainly are times when you're like, man, I really overbooked, or I agreed to do I was taking a dryer out of my 85-year-old father-in-law's home just the other day, and it was funny because it was in the front of the yard, and you're pulling up today, and I'm like, this is a beautiful place, and the first thing Travis is going to see is an appliance by the driveway.
I didn't even notice it.
Well, we moved it. I said, lock. But it's things like that. I helped my father-in-law do something he couldn't do, and went to Lowe's, bought a new dryer, unhooked the old one, had to rewire them, new plugs, put in the new one, and by the time 3 or 4 hours later I get that dryer out of the back of my truck, it just goes right in the front of the driveway, so that when someone comes to visit for the first time in 10 years, the first thing they see, so my benevolent act led to something that was kind of became, and you can...
But on a purest level, what matters?
Yeah.
Helping...
That's right.
Trumps the vision of what I see. You know what I mean?
It does. And I don't usually care, but I find myself in those binds all the time doing... but and it can be little things. I was, over Christmas recently took my family we walked basically from Mexico through Belize through Guatemala. And I just wanted my sons to experience that the way I experienced it 20 something years ago. And I wanted them to see what it was like to be full Spanish, full immersion, full culture, full Spanish, no English, and bartering, and, you know, ropa típica. And we ended up in Chulamar. And of course we were also hunting a secret surf spot, which we found about 30 miles south of El Paredon. And, you know, that's epic in itself. Anytime you go to a place where people don't even know what surfboards are and you're out there by yourselves, shipping tankers a mile off the coast just stacked up to go to the Panama Canal, and you're out there just looking around with these, you know, solid 5 to 6 foot stuff coming through. And we did that, but we had incredible life experiences. We you know, got to see some of the guys that fought in the Belizean independence in 1961. This one guy, Richard David Thomas, whose grandfather's nickname was Snake Man, and they had roads in San Ignacio named after him. This was a guy who was a witch doctor that would put snakes in the beds of people he didn't like. And here his grandson is a friend of mine, and he's taken us through his orange groves, where we learned that oranges are not orange. They painted them orange in the 20s as one of the first attempts at marketing, Madison Avenue marketing. Paint these orange because they might sell better, when in fact oranges all over the world are bright green, and the greener they are, the better they are. So you're learning crazy things like that, and we're on 14-mile canoe rides in the jungles of Belize, swimming with piranha, and, you know, all these incredible experiences we had in Flores y Petén and Benque Viejo, and just the idea of taking chicken buses on Christmas Eve across Guatemala was something I wanted my family to see.
And that was last year, wasn't it?
That was just 6 or 7 months ago, yeah. And then we get to where we're going, and it's the triple volcano. Guatemala has 33 volcanoes, and like 16 are active or something. And we're out there in the water, and there's ashes falling on us. And of course, I'm looking around. No one is alarmed, so I presumed it was an everyday occurrence. But my friend Eric Urbina from Chulamar, who's a wonderful friend and a guy that helped, you know, we couldn't have gotten, when you're in the heart of it, where they don't see, when you get the reaction as tall white people in a place around the world, when
Sure.
they've never seen one, it's good to have someone on the ground that can, you know, help you with your Spanish a little bit and show you where the best place not to go at that moment is. But, you know, when you ask, you know, necesitas, you know, peligroso, is this dangerous, you know, fumar? And he was like, no. And then to find out just 6 months later that one of those two, the Terra del Fuego, just blew its top off and buried 70 people 5 miles from where we were, driving every day, looking at them, admiring them, taking pictures.
Crazy, man.
And then I realized when he sent me 12 pictures of the lines of people standing up whose roads were blocked with 12 feet of ash. And these are very third world country people, and with no means. You know, my first instinct was, man, I was just there and your people were so wonderful to us. You know, what can I do? Do I need to go there? Like, Eric, should I get on a plane? Can I help you? Dig people out, bring water, whatever. And he said, no, we're fine. Of course, they're very self-sufficient.
Self-reliant, yeah.
Yeah, but it's hard not to cut that, you know, it's hard not to send that little gift along. It says there's probably somebody whose lifestyle just changed dramatically. Anything, you know, so those are the easy helps, you know. It's real easy to send a check to St. Jude because you know 4-year-olds that struggled like your oldest son did are dying every day. And that's something I believe firmly in. What can we do every day to make this a better place? And I try to transition that into songwriting, or more importantly, the process, working with artists, working with musicians. I'm convinced that the culminating result will be imbued with magic.
Well, what I'm getting from it is it's impossible for all the things that you just talked about, from family, lighter, there you go, from family to your outlook on the world, to the benevolence of just helping when you can, and sometimes overextending, you know, and getting yourself in some tricky situations. But your songwriting to me is such a parallel to just that outlook of life.
Well, thank you, man.
Of just, like you said, of magic, man.
Yeah,
of magic.
Je ne sais quoi. There's, whatever it is, you just can't. I know that I can't figure out what the hell I'm doing moment by moment in my own mind. I just finished one that I'll play for you later, and the opening line is, "You never know what's going to happen next." And it sounds like such a trite line.
Not to me.
But when the next line is, "Come on, let's go, put on your dress. We got a show to play, forget the rest. We can drink and smoke that later on the bus." It's kind of a way of saying, boom, the universe is going to drop anything on you. Be ready.
That's it.
But then the rest is kind of paint this picture of a really fun, tight band throwing caution to the wind and getting up there anyways and putting on a great show, playing some great songs. And then the image I had when I wrote it, and the song is called American Dream, is just an audience full of people that are, and oddly enough, I even thought about what audience would you have the most fun in for the last 50 years. And somehow, even though I never loved them that much, the Grateful Dead just popped into my mind.
Oh, of course.
And I do love them as the band that kind of gave the finger to every part of the industry and just made their money on tour revenue. And it turned into a behemoth that they couldn't control. But when I was younger, I admired their spirit, esprit de jouer, just the whole party.
The culture, man.
Culture. It was come have a good time. And we're friends.
You're accepted here.
We wear
no
denim cut-off shorts and no shoes, and all 100 of our roadies have their families with them, and they all get paid really well.
Yeah.
There was something cool about that. Of course, I also love punk rock. I love country, outlaw country. And I tried to put them all together. So it's funny to me now that the age, you get into your late 40s, and whereas I would have been afraid of ever trying to tap into my Grateful Dead thing, I'm getting to places where I'm like, man, there's something really magic about that winding, cyclical nature of a song like Sugar Magnolia or something. So American Dream, of course, the title also because of their album American Beauty, and the concept of just, you never know what's going to happen next. So come on, let's go, put on your dress.
Dude, I love not putting just big wall blinders up to certain genres of music. Man, when I got into the Grateful Dead, it was a rabbit hole for me. It definitely happened later in life, though. I mean, I dabbled in it, as a teen and stuff. But when I finally dove into their catalog, I really drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And it just, stuff like that just reminds me just to stay open to
listen to it all.
Just to everything, man.
Yeah.
I'm just stay curious.
Take the good.
Stay curious.
Take the good and leave the bad.
Dude, it's like you're talking about this new song of yours. It's like when I wrote The Great Divide, it's the same. Like the chorus is, there's a little bit of magic and jump into the great unknown.
There is.
But you don't have to jump from the Great Divide.
And
but
that's
if
a
you
beautiful
do,
premise.
I'll catch you on the other side.
It's
just
that
like
says it all.
That song just takes on new meanings for me. Even when I play it, it's like whatever headspace I'm in at that time, it's like that one's got layers for me.
Yeah, and let it help carry you out, and that is what a great song and an album, especially. I know you're feeling this as you've completed a wonderful, in my opinion, of course, a legacy project, one that I was also very close with. I know how you feel when it's finished. And when it's finished, you're like, man, do I really have to start over? Do I got to do this again?
It's terrifying, man.
And you do get to a place where you're kind of like, well, maybe if I never finish one, I'll never have to start one. But you do keep starting them. You never stop starting them.
That's why I'm saying admire from afar. It's like, man, letting go of a project or sending it out into the world is Every time I do it, it's a different process. You have this trajectory. It's like shooting a bow and arrow into the sky. You have a relative direction, but you just have to let it go.
Muscle memory.
You put an album out into the world, and what it does is what it does, and is move on to the next thing. It's just such a weird cycle. It's like I found this thing the other day about what the creative process is. Hold on, let me pull it up on my phone. It's so to the point. Creative process. Number 1, this is awesome. 2, this is tricky. 3, this is shit.
Oh, I saw that.
4, I am shit.
I'm shit. Yeah.
5, this might be okay. 6, this is awesome. Then it's just repeat. You know, it's like that is it to me. It's so spot on. It's
isn't that the way?
It's it.
Because you can go back to stuff that
The most powerful part. 3 to 4. Number 3, this is shit. 4, I am shit.
And that's a terrible...
It's so... But, man, every fucking song I go through
And
this.
if you can get away... If you can sidestep those steps in the process, sidestep the self... I don't know whether you can sidestep the self-deprecation, because I think that's part of the process.
Just prolonging it. Keeping the critic in your mind away as long as you can.
Yep. But if you're not beating yourself up on your own, if you're not expecting the most out of yourself, you're not getting better. And if you put timelines on things, like it's unfortunate because in our business we do have schedules. I know when I'm working with someone else, for instance, you know, I can't not make sure that the studio time is booked at that time and that people show up. And of course, as a result, for myself, I just kind of like, when I get to it, I get to it. But part of the process of the self-deprecation is really healthy. If you are convinced, wisdom is what we don't know in anything. If you're convinced that you've gotten to the pinnacle of your songwriting, then you're at the bottom. You got to believe that you're at the bottom all the time and challenge yourself on each new song, each new collection of... Each album should be a beautiful compendium or body of work that tells its own story from the place where you were in your life.
It's a snapshot of that time right there.
Yeah, and if you capture, that's as important as some of the details in the production value. Of course, mic placement. Of course, headroom. Of course, data bits and sample rates. All that can become important. Plugins and Pro Tools and how you're going to edit it and what makes it time efficient. That's important. But at the end of the day, it's did you capture...
Yeah, the listener doesn't give a fuck about any of that.
They don't care about any of that.
They don't care if it was 32-bit float or 48 or they just don't care.
Can you put the album on replay and would more than 10 people want to sit and let it start for the second time?
Is it a gut punch, yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like...
And then each individual song is measured like that, and then the arrangement of the songs themselves, are they intriguing enough to keep you on the line for that song? And then can that song bridge you to the next one, and can you do it 10 or 11 times? And if you can do that, you've written the book. You've written a book about a story, about a period of time, or about a theme, or an element, or a parody, or a metaphor, whatever it is about your life, someone else's life, two lives together. And if you can infuse them all and people are enriched by it, then you've got a quality piece of... And then, of course, going back to what we talked about, if I can do that and I'm very satisfied and it's all but finished, even mastered, and all that it lacks is just being turned into 500 copies or 1,000 copies, I kind of get really excited that I know it's there. It's like bullets in the gun. I've got a six shooter with a lot of albums in the can, but I don't have to fire them yet. I hope. But maybe someday, if the world needs self-defense, they can pop a couple caps in the ass of the world and say this was...
It's got a soundtrack. It's got a time capsule soundtrack when the world blows up. All right, I got a question for you.
Wouldn't that be something?
What's your take on songwriters also being political and people telling them to leave politics out of their songwriting?
I really don't have a take. I'm pretty, as a Libra, for one thing, I'm constantly walking. They say Libras their scales are in balance. I'm constantly running up one side and down the other, trying to keep them in balance. I think that's the other side of the Libra. As a Libra, as a independent, and I try to stay away from politics. I was very apolitical my entire upbringing. Rock and roll and music to me for the first 15 or 20 years, and it still is. I don't ever really write about anything political. So from that front, I would say I personally choose to keep politics, but out of my music. But
what about the songwriters
I generally
that you're
recognize,
listening to right now? Because there's an argument to be made that if you don't have something to say about what's going on right now, that you're not doing your job as a songwriter.
Yeah, I don't know about that, man. I'm one of those people that I know McCarthyism was terrible, and I know that I've seen examples recently of people, whether it's in Hollywood or in the music business where, far left won't work with far right. I don't go in for any of that. I think politics should be.
I don't know about like working together, but as a songwriter, some people look to songwriters
they have
for
always,
answers.
Yeah, they have Bob Dylan, from Bob Dylan through, U2, Sunday Bloody Sunday.
And I hear it a lot right now. It's like, if you're a songwriter and you don't have something to say about what's going on, then
I write so generally and mysteriously that if I tried to compress the 800 or 900 books that I've read on geopolitics in my life, and Voltaire and Robespierre and Machiavelli and
you'd rather take the universal approach.
If I did that and put it into a song, no one would even know that I had it in there, and that would be my goal. My goal would be to write a treatise on politics.
But that's political.
It is. If I did it, I would hope that no one even understood what I was talking about. So I have a different approach to that, almost a Masonic veiled, if I could reveal all of my innermost secrets or opinions about very difficult subjects through the magic of the poetry of song, and no one knew what I was talking about, that would be a dream come true.
Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head already.
I think the
I think you're there, man. I think you're there.
Do I think it's important? Yes. I would never go away from that question by not saying there is always a place in society as a moderate independent, and that's about
fiercely independent.
That's about as political as I'll get. Seeing very equally both sides and trying and weighing and measuring each position very carefully, and equivocally liking both elements of libertarian conservatism and progressive liberalism and their place in each issue and how important they are, in whether it's economic, social, every ramification, thusly entrenched by those things. And it's very complex, very complex. So I'm a fierce believer that you can't put a D or an R behind your name and then follow the pack.
No.
That is troubling to me more than anything, that there is an element on both sides that does just blindly follow. And the next most troubling thing is that both of them are completely misunderstanding each other's views and goals, and that if they just spoke more about what they hope to achieve, 70 to 80% of them would find that they were in line with each other.
Man. But the extreme on both sides is just
dangerous.
Getting crazy.
Always
man.
has been, and as soon as people read enough,
it's getting crazier though.
It is divisive, and I always hope for the balance to come out. And if it doesn't, I know where I'll stand, which is,
Well, at the same time, man, you're out here on this on this plot of land where, like, you could shut off and you don't have to deal with it.
I don't, but I do. I mean, obviously, I pay taxes. I live.
Sure, but you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
I mean, turn off the news, turn off the phone.
And
it's
I do.
And I get this, like, kind of this. I'm picking up on this energy here. That's just like you already kind of do that.
I don't have to bump into people that are upset at the coffee house if I say something complimentary about our recent president. If he makes a decision that is obviously beneficial for our country, no differently than I would have made a complimentary statement about our previous president, about something he did that was beneficial for our country, or adversely, what someone has done that I very much disagreed with. And I think the job of every individual is to be the loyal opposition at all times to both parties and to rely on critical thinking and what benefits you and your family and your tribe and your what works for you isn't something to shove down everyone else's throat. And that's where our world has gotten to, is if you're a 20-year-old on a college campus and have very particular views, you obviously have very different views than a World War II or Korean War vet about the way he viewed politics and the way she still does. Find common ground, vote, and do what's right for you and your family. And by all means, just like religion, just like who your dentist is, just like your music, don't shove it down anyone else's throat.
Right.
And if you're not listening,
Go ahead.
if you're not listening to the other side, you're doing yourself a great disservice. And right now we have two very diametrically opposed sides about things. And the reality is, to make a nation great, there's no single figurehead that can destroy down this beautiful experiment, which many people have described, that we have the worst government, we have the worst system in the world, but it's better than any that have come before. This is the great experiment, this republic. And so far it's working. And people can chip away. They can say socialism might be better. You can say, laissez-faire capitalism is better. And they do, from both sides. But both have proven to fail. Legislate when you can't regulate when you can't legislate. I am a believer that I think individuals with their families and their communities know more than a senator sitting in Washington, what you know,
Sure.
what's better for you. It used to be that the most reluctant candidate was the best candidate. The person that didn't want the job the most was the most qualified. We don't have that anymore. The whole system has changed. And therefore, I think you have to start locally. I think you have to just be firm in what you believe for yourself and your family and for those you care about. And if someone tries to impress, you got to listen. Obviously, a closed-off mind is exactly that. It's not able to receive new ideas, and that is, to me, the heart of progressivism.
Yeah.
And if you look,
The closed-mindedness, man, or the lack of critical thinking is the real nail in the coffin to me. It's like, dude, it always comes back to the most simple stuff that you learn as a kid. If you really just tap into treat other people like you want to be treated,
sure,
it's the solve all.
It is, and politics is a dirty game too. So I feel very strongly about certain positions that certain politicians take. You have to. And I disagree. I critically think about what I might do differently. I look at whether it's affecting a majority of our country in a positive or a negative manner, and then I move on. And I realize that I'm just a little thistle that just got popped out of a dandelion, and I'm going to parachute to the next cobweb over.
I'm with you.
And hopefully that the next cobweb over has some more dandelion friends in it, and that the spider is a little bit more benevolent than the last spider, and he doesn't eat dandelion thistle, But and if he does, then I got to embrace that next journey, which is now it's me and the spider. So how do I handle the spider? And if that spider web goes away and my dandelion thistle picks up a ladybug on the way to the next tree branch, then I got to navigate around the ladybug and what's her deal? And then what's the tree branch's deal? And everything is a metaphor for everything. Politics, the more you read about what happened in the past, the more you realize how much it cycles. I do have great concerns when I see things starting to repeat. History, of course, is written by the winner, but it also, in order to not repeat it, it has to be paid very close attention to. So certainly closed-mindedness, totalitarianism, power elites, radicalism, a violent oppression, a non-loyal opposition, abuse of the fourth estate. If the media doesn't tell the truth, we're all screwed, and sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. I think it's absolutely important that what the bulk of what people are hearing is the truth, and represented from a fair and true compass. Just the facts, please.
Yeah,
what
man.
happened, and I don't care what you think about it because you donated 30 grand to R or D. Just tell me what happened. What were the votes? What's the situation? And let me make an informed opinion so that I can, when it's my turn to put someone in the House of Representatives in my district, or a senator, one of two in my state Senate, or a president in that one two of those three branches, because I'm never going to be able to vote a Supreme Court justice in, but I can help decide who's going to be the president. I can help decide who's going to be in the legislative branch. And when I get older, maybe I'll write letters to these buffoons and start telling them what I think. But
you know what I hear, man.
If I did now, I don't think they'd read them.
You know what I hear? Tripp Murphy, 2020.
Oh God, man, I would never make it through the Piccadilly Circus melee of my
Dude,
life's.
it's a.
My
I
life's
think
issues.
it's the only line of work that's dirtier than the music business.
I think so too. And that's pretty dirty. Dirtier than this cigar I'm sucking on.
Well, look, man, we're 133 minutes into this thing.
That's short. I thought we'd go for 4 hours.
Dude,
you and I talked.
I mean,
but we should cut it off.
Let's do this. What's next for you? I know you're writing new songs. I know you're still writing daily.
Yeah.
You're still no clear answer of releasing anything.
Yeah. Man, what's next for me? Well, certainly to wake up every morning with an enormous frown on my face, and how quickly can I turn it into the largest smile on my face through family, faith, spiritualism, love, friendship, guidance. Create as much good in the world, certainly around me, and try to let that find its way into music projects, albums, productions of my own and others. If I'm lucky enough, if people ask me to work with them, I consider myself so fortunate and so humbly just appreciative. And I have been able to go work with some great people, and I hope to help them finish projects. And
so Atticus Records is still on the chopping block.
Without a doubt.
It's still...
if one day that's the most successful...
Would you say that's the most tangible, realistic thing that could be happening next is Atticus Records?
It's always been there since its inception. You know, obviously we incorporated in 2003, right when Paleo Sun went away. My brother and he kind of left in 2007. I have a very, very long-term game plan. And one day I do hope for many great writers and artists to be in one place, under one roof, sharing a kindred spirit and cooperatively enjoying the benefits of a great publishing division, a great A&R division, a great manufacturing relationship, a great distribution relationship, all of those which I've established, of course. And then I get to the place where I pull back and say, whoa, it's not time yet. So I don't know whether it's going to be the grand finale. It's going to be the grand finale of the fireworks before all the fireworks, you know, or like, I don't know, drinking the chocolate milk out of the bottom of the jug by sticking a screwdriver in it. Shotgunning chocolate milk would be one, but I'm not a big fan of like slow trickling I think that certainly allows for my ultimate goal, which would be build something beautiful, have everything in place, create musically one of the, and this without sounding heinously off base or egotistical. I've always believed that my purpose here was to build something that the world had never seen with music, surrounded by more than myself, not for me, myself, but so that when it is time to stop or move on or just give it up, that the only thing people ever say or think is, we didn't get it, but now we do. And there it is, you know, and now we can access it somehow. Or just have it, like I said, just leave little treasure trove time capsules in the trunks of trees and make the world's greatest treasure hunt occur. And you got to go find it or dig it up, or it would be nice for the music.
All right, we're back up and running. I don't know where that cut off, but
just treat music like life. And if anything, we've both learned about life and our friendship and what we're doing here today, man. Just the fact that you drove an hour to come down here and sit with the cicadas and the blue herons and the alligators and the chickens and German shepherds and sweat it out on this porch.
Dude, this is beautiful up here. I had, you know, I've got zero expectations for what this podcast is. The initial instinct was at the end of a conversation that I have with dear friends that I admire.
You feel good.
I feel better.
Yeah.
And today is a classic example of that,
yeah,
man.
and we did it you and I did it all the time.
Dude, and this is, I think, the longest conversation we've had where we haven't picked up guitars and instantly started playing.
Easily.
I'm like, I've been itching to do that this whole time and just kind of fighting the urge.
Yeah.
But I always love talking to you, man. I'm sure this isn't going to be the last time you guys hear from Tripp Murphy.
No, I hope not.
But
the pleasure was mine, Travis. I love you, brother.
Thank you so much,
The pleasure
man.
was mine. This is a cool thing. I know that you will. I know you will find many tiny diamonds in your conversations with everyone you love and that love you back. All deserved.
You heard it here, folks.
Thanks.
Tripp Murphy.
See you soon. Or not.
Well, folks, that was the first episode. That was a lengthy one. We didn't plan on going that long, but you know what? When you get together with an old buddy that you admire, that has a lot to say about a lot of things, it's always a pleasure. So thank you all so much for sticking around. First episode of a Live on Tape podcast. There's only one thing I want to know. What keeps you alive?